actually doing a collab with Emma Butcher. She's a friend of mine here on YouTube that does art videos as well, so we thought it'd be cool if we did an art video together, but more specifically, an art piece together. That's right, we made one picture. We thought it'd be a cool idea where she does her style on one half of the page and I do my style on the other half of the page, which made it pretty interesting actually. I thought of a concept of a mermaid in mid-transition from mermaid to human. So Emma took the mermaid half of the image and the sea part of the background, and I took the human part of the image in the land part of the background. She also did her half traditionally, and I did my half digitally. So completely different worlds here, but the goal was to see if we could make one piece using two completely separate halves. So this was the initial sketch that I started with, that I showed Emma, kind of to show her like what my idea was. And I came up with this pose of like this character like in mid-transition looking down at her legs going, oh my gosh. So just to make it a little more interesting and like a little more goofy, less majestic and a little more awkward because it's me, I put a line down the center of the character so that she could know what half was hers and what half was mine. And then there's a red center line down the actual page so that we could tell which side of the background was ours, which actually makes it a little more interesting. When the character is off-center and then you still split everything in half, it doesn't look like the image is completely split down the middle, which I think gave it a little more character. So after she worked on her half, she gave it back to me and it looked like this. Now, this was a lot different than what I was expecting initially. It looks good, I like it. But for some reason, my brain was thinking the horizon line was going to be significantly lower. So I took her half into Photoshop and layered it on top of the initial sketch that I came up with in the beginning to see how things lined up, and a few things were off. The angle of the arm, the waistline, the horizon line was a lot different than where I was imagining it to be. Now, the horizon line part was completely my fault. I never ever told her where I was thinking the horizon line would go, so I kind of just assumed that we would both put it on this bottom sort of area. So I had to kind of rethink the way that things were. I was also imagining that the ocean reached a little farther onto where the mermaid was standing so that you could see the shoreline a little more on the right of the page, but she did things a lot closer to the left. So what I did was I just kind of blended out where that sand met the water so that I could move the shoreline over to where I wanted it to be. I kept the horizon line the same and I kept everything else the same because I pretty much decided that I was going to work with what she gave me, and the only thing I was going to mess with was that shoreline, just so that it could kind of meet in the middle of what my original vision was and what hers ended up being. So this is not the same layer as her piece, this is a layer on top of that where I'm just kind of roughing out some white kind of faded areas just so I could kind of make a little transition. Then once I got that sand out of the way, I started sketching in the new shoreline where I was imagining it to be in the first place, but since it was a little bit different, I had to change it a little bit. You can see that the castle is actually really high in the back because that's where the horizon line is, but that means there has to be land up there as well. So I had to make the shoreline kind of curve up to the horizon line to make sure that it met properly. So after the background was all sketched in, I zoomed in and started sketching in the new right half of the body. She made sure that with her outline she kind of exaggerated where that middle line was, which meant that I had to kind of erase that a little bit to make sure that it was pretty seamless and didn't have a giant black line in the middle of it. So to match the way that she did the face, I kind of drew some more perspective lines to kind of tell me where things were going to go, and I tried to match it up as most as I could. I also told Emma to go ahead and draw the entirety of the hair just because I wanted to see where it was going to flow. But then of course, because I was doing half, I ended up erasing the right half of the hair and adding in my own style to it. Then when we got into the body, I noticed that the waistline was a lot higher than I originally drew that, so I raised it up just to make it match, thickened up the leg a little bit. Pretty much after that I was just able to follow the original sketch that I had. I also added some webbing between the fingers and some fins around the arms and the legs, just because I feel like that kind of added to the whole transitioning thing, even though I know in Disney The Little Mermaid does not have fins like that, but it was a stylistic thing, I guess. I also made sure to draw in these like tearing kind of lines around the waist. I'm not really sure how to put it, but you can see around the waistline where the tail kind of transitions into the skin. It kind of looks like part of it had been torn off or had fallen off or something, kind of like ragged clothing that was kind of just hanging on the body. The hair was very interesting because I knew that it had to transition into what she had drawn seamlessly, which means I had to make my lines a lot thicker since it looks like she used Sharpie in hers. It was a lot thicker than the way I would normally use my lines, so I had to thicken them up a bit, which most of that is done with a black outer glow later on. But when it comes to the hair, I had to really draw that in, just to make sure that I knew exactly where it was all going to be and that you couldn't tell where her lines stopped and mine started. I did this for a lot of the character where the lines stopped. I also did a lot of erasing of this sort of center dotted line, which was very helpful of Emma to make sure that she put it there just to remind everybody where the transition started. Now after the outline was done, I started messing around with the mermaid itself. So what I had to do to make sure that the background was easy to manipulate was I pretty much had to cut out everything that she had already drawn with the pen tool and make sure that the background that I wanted to be white was basically non-existent. So all that area where the sand was, you can see that I'm going around and making sure that I'm cutting out all of that white part just so that I can draw underneath it and it'll still come through. Now the thing is that she drew this traditionally, which means that all of that white part that you're seeing, even the white part that was originally on her piece, that empty space, was not actually empty. It's not see-through or anything because it was a piece of paper that was scanned in. So that's a solid piece of white there. So for that part and the sand I wanted to get rid of, I had to make sure I cut it out entirely, which is why I'm using the pen tool to cut out those parts of the character. At one point here, I added a really bright sort of pink outer glow just so I could see where everything was to make sure that I got it all. So you can see that the edge of everything is pretty much the side of the buildings and then that sort of water line that connects to the mermaid around her and through the middle and then down again by the rocks. Then, after I finally got all of that cut out, I was feeling happy enough that I could move on to the color, which means that I had to pick all of the color that she had already used, which I'm totally okay with, not complaining, not complaining. Would not have gone for that much yellow, but I wanted to make sure everything looked exactly the way that it was supposed to, so that everything was as seamless as possible. And after everything was done, I actually ended up really liking the way the skin looked anyway, so. But I wouldn't have thought of it on my own, so that's weird. She did some shading. I'm not sure what medium she used. I know the outlines are fine liners and Sharpies. I can tell from the Sharpie being thicker and from it being a lighter black than the rest of the lines. I had some experience with Sharpies. I also had to thicken up the eyes quite a bit because there was a pretty thick line. It looked like she tried to do maybe some eyeliner with the Sharpie, so I had to replicate that as much as I could, making sure that the eyes were pointing in the same direction, which was not down at the feet but ended up being kind of like out at the characters that were in the water. You know, I also just noticed Sebastian and Flounder are off in the ocean. They're just kind of like smiling, waving at her, and she's like looking at her feet going, oh my gosh, I'm transitioning out, I don't want to be in the freaking land. It's sad. She's just like in the middle of like being all like, have you guys seen the actual scene of her transitioning in the Little Mermaid movie? It looks painful. Doesn't this look painful? It looks painful to me. And they're just over there like, aha, oh look at you, aha, you're in pain. Artistic choice. Right here you can see that I'm trying to kind of figure out the shading for the abdomen, which was really hard because the mermaid tail was raised higher up on the waist than I thought it was going to be, so I was like, where are the abs now? I don't know where to do them. I don't know where they are. So I kind of skipped that a little bit and just kind of cheated my way around it and then went on to the rest of the body. You can see on the leg what I mean about like those scales that kind of look like they're kind of the fragments that are left after it, the rest of it kind of trying to magically go away. I don't know what I'm saying. You can see it though. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say? I can't speak it, but you can see it, right? Yeah, okay. Kind of reminds me of Poison Ivy actually, which makes me want to draw Poison Ivy now. There's the AC. Oh, it's there. Can you even hear that on camera? Oh, that would suck if you could. Going in with all the details, making sure to get the shading. The shading of the legs were a little bit difficult because I wasn't really sure where exactly the light was coming from. The sun in Emma's picture was like way over to the left, like way over there. I think you guys are seeing it this way or this way. Is this mirrored? I don't know. Anyway, it's on the left of the picture. But as far as I could see, a lot of the light, though, was coming from the right, top right of everything, and the shading was on the bottom left, there wasn't a lot of shading, but you can see around like the arms and the face, the shading was on the left. And you know, technically if the sun was a light source, that wouldn't be what was happening. But I didn't go by the sun, did not go with that light source. I went by the way the shading was already on the picture to make sure it matched as closely as possible. So I wasn't really sure exactly like how to do the shading on the leg, but I kind of just like cheated my way through that one too. The shading in this one, it's tedious, man. It's difficult. It's time consuming. There's a lot of things that I cut out because I was like experimenting with some stuff, but it worked out. The hand, because the hand was at a certain angle, I kind of assumed that it was mostly covered in shadow, because if the light is coming from this way, all of this is going to be covered in shadow. The light's not really gonna go over there unless it's bouncing off something in front of it, which I just kind of gave it a little bit of rim lighting. I'm zoomed out enough, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, we're doing the background now. Okay, you guys, the background is really interesting this time because it's not cartoony. I actually took Jazz's blending brush. In case you guys don't know, I use Jazz's brushes sometimes. He has a completely custom brush pack that he made that you can get from jazzstudios.com. I downloaded those, I bought them, I have them, and sometimes I use those for things just because I like them better than the default brushes that are already in Photoshop. So the sketching brush I use is actually his that I scaled down and changed the color in my own settings, and the inking brush is the same brush that he uses for inking, but I also scaled that down and I saved them to my computer that way so that I have my brush and my pencil that are really just his that are changed a little bit. And then all the rest of his brushes are the same, so I just use them sometimes. So I used his blending brush just as a way to kind of make the ocean look kind of painterly, because I knew that there was like the sand color that transitioned into the white of like the foam that transitioned into like the teal, because there's the water and the sand that are kind of like mixing with each other making teal, and then it kind of goes into a lighter blue, and then the farther deep into the ocean it goes, it's a darker blue, which was absolutely perfect because the color that Emma made for her ocean was actually a pretty dark blue, so I was able to transition from the sand color to the white to the teal to the light blue to her blue pretty seamlessly, and I actually really love how it turned out. Like, this is probably one of my favorite backgrounds I've ever done. As far as like just the background part, it doesn't necessarily look like it's the same style as the piece, like certain things like this piece or this piece or this piece. Like, I really love the style of having cartoony outlines in pieces like that. So I never really get a chance to practice what it would look like if there was this sort of painterly digitally painted style. So this was very new to me, but it actually ended up turning out way better than I was expecting for my first time doing something like this. But I just couldn't see myself doing it super cartoony for this background because there was so much detail in the sand and the transition of the water and the foam and everything. And I'm telling you, man, I'm not mad. I'm not mad about how this turned out. So this is a part where I am like trying to seamlessly blend her water in with my water, which means that I'm kind of bringing in the blending into hers a little more, just to make her colors that were already there kind of blend a little bit just closer to where my colors were. And then closer up by the horizon, I did some really light kind of like oceany kind of like highlights. Don't know what you call them, like the reflection of the waves, which looks like a super blurred version of it. That's kind of what I was going for anyway. So if you squint, it looks real. And then the last thing I did after kind of making these like hilly trees in the background was the sky. So I made that kind of fade from like a white to a light blue and then a darker blue. And I took the light blue and the dark blue from Emma's sky and just kind of blended them in my own sort of style, the way that I would do like a realistic-ish painterly style. I feel weird calling it my style because even though it is how I chose to do this one, it's not necessarily my style that I'm known for, but maybe I'll do more things like this, who knows. Now I'm just adding some more highlights to the ocean around where the outline is, fixing some things, doing some final touches, painted in some rocks, making sure there's shading on the rocks and that they're in the lighting in the proper direction and everything else. And then you can see at this point is when I've thickened up those lines by adding an outer glow to the outlines that I made, and then doing some more final touches, kind of changing the color of everything. I did something at the very end that I was not expecting for myself, and I put basically an entire layer of just a really faint pastel yellow, and I kind of lowered the opacity, changed the blending style, and it made everything look like it was like glowing, kind of like a sea kind of thing. And now, when I have that layer turned off, it just looks dark and boring. When I have it turned on, it looks like it's reflecting off of like the sun and the sand. So with this being the final image, you can really see what I was talking about as the before and the after, about words about like the green looking a lot more green than it was, which I actually really like. It's like the background colors and the foreground colors of the character really complement each other. You can see the left side of her where there's a green tail, the water by that is blue, but on the right side where her leg is more of a yellow color, that water by that is green. So the green and the green weren't necessarily right next to each other, which I thought turned out really freaking well. Like, I was not expecting that, but hey, added bonus, you know? I, for one, am like super proud how this turned out. If you're wondering how Emma made her half, though, you can see that on her channel. I'll have a link in the description and in the end card. Definitely go check her out, because this piece would not have been made if she had not made the first half. This was a two-person piece, split down the middle, two different styles, would not have been made without her, so go ahead and go and watch and see how she made the first half. Anyways, I hope you guys loved this video. It was so fun to make. I had so much fun just collaborating and you know, brainstorming with Emma and making all these things. This idea was so cool. And actually, I thought it was going to be harder than it was when I came up with this idea. The initial sketch, like the first rough draft of the sketch that I did, just, you know, as a concept kind of thing, was so off. But I kind of just did it in a way to just show her like maybe what my idea was. Then I refined that into the one that I ended up giving her, which then let her use that to make her half, which then I used that to make the rest of it. So I guess it started with me and then it was her and then it ended with me, but it's enough. We're equal. It's equal. Equals. We're all equal. Gosh, this is why I shouldn't film in the middle of the night. Who needs sleep? I don't need sleep. Who needs sleep? No one needs sleep. We can just all be nocturnal forever. So tired. Why don't I drink coffee? I hate coffee. I think I need coffee. No, I think coffee would mess me up. I'm too energetic as it is. Tired, but I'm energetic. What is that? Why? Emma, I hope you like how this turned out. I hope you like my process and how I used the things that you changed to benefit the picture. And I gotta say, you did so well. So this turned out super well. I think you did an amazing job. Everybody, once again, make sure to go check out her video on her channel. Links everywhere. But if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up so I know you did. And if you're wondering what I'm doing in between videos, you can follow me on Twitter. That is where I'm the most active. But I have a list of other social media down in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye!